Yes. Before we officially begin tonight, could you please raise your hand if you plan on speaking under number 5, presentations from the gallery on the multi-purpose issue? Okay. All right, just to give us an idea as far as timing and whatnot. Thank you very much. You're not held to that. If you decide that you want to later, you still can. And with that, before we officially start tonight's meeting, I'll call on Third Ward Councilman Ken Hussey for a prayer, and then please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Dear Lord, as we gather here this evening, close to the Christmas season, we ask your blessings on all of us assembled tonight as we discuss this very important matter before our community. We ask your blessings on the many families in our community as they celebrate this Christmas and holiday season. We ask your special blessing on Dr. Rome and his family. Dr. Rome, whose grandmother passed away recently. Our thoughts and prayers are with him and his family during this time of grieving. Please bless our community. Make sure that everybody has a safe, happy, and joyous holiday season. In your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, once again, welcome to our special meeting dealing with our multi-purpose center and that project with Lincoln University and our Parks and Rec Commission. Welcome you all here tonight, and I'll ask the clerk to read roll, please.
Branch.
Here.
Bray.
Here.
Costales.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Henry.
Here.
Hussey.
Here.
Mahalovich.
Here.
Prather.
Here.
Scrivener.
Here.
Ward.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum this evening. Next, we'll call for a motion to approve the agenda. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the agenda as printed, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next, we'll move into presentations from staff and invited guests. First from staff, we have Steve Kroll, our city administrator. Steve, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This meeting tonight is a follow-up to the December 15th City Council meeting at which the City Council indicated your interest in following up on some funding opportunities to fill the financing gap for a multi-purpose facility. The Parks and Recreation Lincoln University partnership can bring benefits to each entity which might not be available otherwise. Tonight is not about designing the facility or getting into project details, etc. Parks and Recreation, Lincoln University have already spent a lot of time working on those specifics. Tonight is about focusing on the big picture, determining if Parks and Recreation needs funding assistance from the city for the multi-purpose portion of the facility, and if so, how might the city be involved in providing that assistance. Since there have been numerous meetings and updates previously provided by staff, tonight staff will provide a very general overview of some of the project specifics related to the multi-purpose portion of the facility. We are, however, prepared to get into as much detail as you may want. Bill Lockwood will provide a brief history of the project and summarize some of the anticipated financing needs. Bill Betts will provide a very brief overview of some potential funding options previously identified by the City Council. And again, we're prepared to get into as much detail as you may want. Dr. Rome is not here tonight, so Sheila Gassner with Lincoln University and Denise Chappell with Parks and Recreation will provide some brief follow-up comments. Council indicated that it was important to have public input to the consideration, and so this is an opportunity for citizens to comment on the potential funding assistance being discussed tonight. After having the staff presentations and closing remarks and receiving public input, I assume Council will want to discuss how you would like to proceed. If you determine that you do want to assist in the financing, any direct and specific direction to staff would be appropriate. So with that, we'll turn it over to Bill Lockwood.
Bill, thanks for being here, sir.
Thank you all for taking time from your holiday season to entertain our requests this evening. Steve asked me to give just a brief history, and I know many of you are aware that this has been a very long-term goal, and I won't go back to 1939 and when it all started and work our way forward. But I want to start back in about September 2010 when the Commission elected to move this up on the priority list for a long-range plan and undertook a feasibility study to try to determine the exact needs of the community and to move the project further. Since that time, we've been having a series of public input sessions, steering committee meetings, focus groups, partnership assessments, community-wide surveys, et cetera, to help put our plan forward. The recommendation coming out of our feasibility study was to go ahead and retain an architect to help us get into the later phases of the project. And finally, on June 10th of 2014 was the date the Parks and Recreation Commission voted to direct the staffs and architects to concentrate their planning efforts on a forecourt facility with an elevated track as the minimum desirable facility. We kind of delayed our efforts as we waited out transformation, some school district issues, some other election possibilities. The conference center proposals were entertained, but we eventually elected now was the time to proceed on our own, despite those other issues that are still ongoing and in various stages of discussion. Financing has been the difficulty all along, but we've continued to work to try to close the gap, and that's our reason for being here this evening. Again, just a recap of the facility with a new opportunity for partnership with Lincoln University has helped to make the possibility of this facility more realistic. We were working on that. Lincoln University is, of course, providing the site for the land. It's a location on Lafayette Street that you all are aware of. And the facility is designed to contain the Lincoln University Student Activity Recreation Wellness Center. The current design goals include 4 basketball, 4 volleyball courts. It includes some multifunction space, a 3-lane elevated walking track, and unfinished basement. And it's about looking at in the neighborhood of around 81 or 82,000 square feet at this point in time. I think last Monday night at the council meeting we presented and got into a fair discussion on cost estimates, and just to kind of review that, the handout or the slide that you have up there before you kind of recaps that same information. There are a couple of significant changes, however, to make the handout a little more accurate. The total cost project was updated to include costs for FF&E and softball field relocation allowances, which were not included in the previous numbers that I gave you last week. But we thought to give you a total project cost, it was important to include those to give you a full picture. The other factor, I've been working with Steve Kroll and Bill Betts since that meeting and taking a look at how the park fund wound up last fiscal year and the increase in fund balance that we were fortunate enough to accumulate, and to propose earmarking that additional fund balance growth in the park fund toward this project. So that ups our contribution from the Parks Fund, as shown on this slide, from about $3.5 to $4.5 million. And you see we're still, with the contribution of Lincoln University, the architect's estimated cost range was a shortfall of $706,000 to $2,983,000. And our goal this evening in coming to meet with you all and present this information is to seek financial assistance, which will put our total resources into the architect's cost range for the project, and which would allow us to feel confident in moving forward to the final phases of this partnership project with Lincoln University. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Bill, do you have a particular dollar amount that you might be looking for tonight from the city?
Well, I think the general discussion that's been talked about since previous meetings is $1.5 million being a number that would put us into the cost range. There may have to be some design adjustments, but if we get good bids, that should put us substantially in place to do a facility that we envision.
I'm assuming Lincoln shares this thought that 1.5 could get you both where you want to be.
I think so, yes.
Okay.
I mean,
Thanks,
Sheila can comment on
I know
that.
Dr. Rome's gone this evening,
Yeah.
obviously, with the passing of his grandmother, but Sheila, thanks for being here. Any questions of Bill by council? Rick?
Bill, would you need that money all up front, or is that something, as it kind of mentioned in the memorandum of understanding, that you would, it might be a line of credit as opposed you could draw off of? I mean, is this something that you're going to need it right away?
Right. The ordinance or the agreement, I think, has been drafted for your consideration, does call for that to be made available as needed. It would not have to be needed up front, and theoretically, if we got really good bids, possibility that we wouldn't need all of it or perhaps any of it, but in order to meet Lincoln's deadline here at the end of the year, to make them comfortable with the idea that we can make this thing work, we felt it important to identify all of the upfront funding at this point. But yes, construction probably would not begin for 6 to 8 months at the optimum, so we would request that money according to the draft of the agreement as it's needed, and we would come back to the council each time we would request a or not a supplemental, but an appropriation, I guess, toward that, whatever the total amount is you all approve. So, okay.
Any other questions of Bill?
Okay.
All right. Thank you,
Thank
Bill. Next, Mr. Betts. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Just a few funding options if the council were to approve assisting parks in this project. We looked at a couple different things. Obviously, we kind of talked about bonding. From our point of view, would it be something that would make sense to assist with some bonding or some things of that? From staff's perspective, it's probably not the best way to go. Obviously, it's going to require some debt service. We would have to pay the interest, and we do have the cash on hand and a couple of different options there. The options that we looked at was we could just do a contribution, so we can just contribute some money. We could use the lodging tax money to do some contribution, or we could use the general fund unrestricted fund balance. Those are a couple of the options that we looked at. We also looked at doing a letter of credit. I think there's been some different things passed around about the letter of credit. Again, you could do a letter of credit from the lodging tax, or you could do a letter of credit from the general fund unrestricted fund balance. I handed out the sheet so you guys could see it there as well. It gives you a little bit better information. But this is kind of the fund balance numbers as to where we kind of stand today as far as the fund balance is concerned. I want to caveat this with we have not closed the books for the year. So as you'll see, there's a little footnote there that says until the audit is complete, these numbers are subject to change, and they will. Certainly there will be little adjustments here or there. We don't expect any major changes, but until the audit is complete, there will be some adjustments. So I want everybody to understand that is where we are today. So today we're sitting at about $6.5 million is where we think we're going to end the FY14 year. Which is up quite a bit from where we were last year, so it's good news. We have to do reappropriations every year. There's spending that's been reappropriated. For instance, the council approved some police cars to be purchased. That has to be reappropriated. That's part of that $246,000, that GPS equipment. And there's some other things that have to be reappropriated. We've received some grant money but haven't spent it, so that's what that reappropriation dollars is. There's an estimate there for the PD HVAC system. Assuming $1 million is the cost, and we don't know that number today, but assuming that is the cost, and we do take that from the fund balance, we went ahead and calculated that in there. There are some additional funding options we're looking at for that, but we wanted to give you the scenario if the council said, no, we want to spend it all out of fund balance. So we wanted to give you that kind of worst case scenario, assuming it's the $1 million there. So that brings our fund balance down to about $5.2 million, which is a fund balance percentage of 17.86%. So that's where you would stand if we did the PDH VAC and those types of things. You'd stand at the 17.86%. From there, we gave a couple of different just tiers. We went 250K, 500K, 1 million, and 1.5 million. So if the council were to say, hey, we want to do a contribution or we want to do a letter of credit, either one, those would be the impacts that you would see on the fund balance. So if you took the 1.5 million, you'd be down to about 12.77%. And again, that number will probably tweak here and there as we finalize the books for the year. If you only did the 250K, you'd be at 17.01%. So we wanted to show all of that information there, show you all the different levels by which the funding might come from and the impacts that it might have on the fund balance. Happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Bill, did you include any increase in sales tax that this project could?
We did not.
So that's not at all
no,
in
sir.
your projections whatsoever?
No.
And do you recall from our last meeting a week ago what the economic impact of this facility could be?
I believe it was 7.1 million was the economic impact that CVB gave, if I'm correct. I believe so.
All right. Thank you. Questions for Bill? Ralph?
Bill, I want to offer a little bit of history on the 17% adopted by the council a month or two ago.
Sure. Yep. It's in October.
You and I had conversations on the fund balance, and that the city has no policy on what the proper fund balance should be, and the council was given packets or a pamphlet of information, mostly confusing, but talking about how one goes about fund balance and stuff. And that was so. As finance chairman, in visiting with you, I requested that we go with the 17% figure, since that was one of the higher figures and at the time safest, and it was at a time when we were looking to adopt a much larger document. And remind me, please, what the document was. Financial procedures and practices.
It's our financial guidelines, correct? For the city.
There's 20 pages long.
Yes.
Or so.
Yep.
And inside of it was, in one location, it talks about the 17% fund balance.
Correct. That's correct.
And my recollection is, during those conversations that you and I were having, I mentioned that I assumed after this larger document was approved by the council, which occurred a month
in
or so
October,
ago,
I believe. Yeah.
I assumed that at some point the council would come back and visit that 17% figure, because there was feelings on the council even then that 17% was too much. And in that booklet, you might mention, if you remember, there are several arguments on how to arrive at fund balance, and we could end up at 10 or 12 or 14 or 17 and depending on the community, it depends on the community what fund balance is best for the community. Could you speak on that for a minute?
Sure.
How the community goes about?
Yeah,
like we're different than like the Ozarks.
Correct. The guide, the book that you're talking about, the pamphlet, comes from the GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association. So, kind of the guidelines that we kind of follow when it comes to finances for local governments and even state governments use the same kind of situation. The pamphlet talks about there's multiple ways to come about it. The recommendation from the pamphlet is to use 2 months worth of operating expenses as your fund balance. There are other things where, depending on the type of community that you have, you might want to be higher if your community is dependent on certain kinds of revenues. Other communities might want to be lower. And we researched, and there are communities all over the board. There are larger cities that have a much smaller fund balance just because of the nature of their cities and the economy over the years. There are other cities that have much larger fund balances. We had some different discussions amongst staff, and ultimately our recommendation was to come to the council with 17%. Mm-hmm. So that's what we brought to the council at that time.
And the figure was not intended to be cut in stone, but rather that figure was written in pencil. Well, it was officially accepted by the council.
Yeah, for us, for the way we would operate as staff, is we would look at it as being in stone as our guidelines for what we want to do. Part of the guidelines say if at any time that fund balance is to fall below the 17%, is that the city administrator and the finance director come back with a plan that would get us back to the 17% after 2 years. For us as staff, it's what you guys have said. Whether or not how the council feels about it, I can't comment. So.
Okay. Thank you, Bill.
Yes.
I just wanted to mention that it's also important to realize that under a loan or a letter of credit concept, there's money coming back to the city, albeit over a period of years, number of years, whatever you decide. But there is money coming back, so it's not like it's an expenditure, in my view, necessarily.
Any other questions for Bill Betts?
Okay.
Laura, did you have a? Oh, okay. Rick.
But what is the current rate of interest we're earning on our fund balance?
Yeah, we earn 2% is what we earn currently.
All right, thank you.
Any questions for Bill? Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bill, during budget discussions, you guys provided us with a general fund, long-range planning, financial planning thing. And I know on here had us at 16.85 at that time. We've gone up a little bit here. But for 2018, the projected is to have us down to 5.68% with only 1.8 million in that reserve fund. Has there been any significant number changes that would have a significant change on that?
Yeah, and what will change that is depending on how much the council approves for us to spend on capital. When you look at the 5-year plan that we had handed out, and there's going to be, I believe, further meetings planned on that with the council as we move down the road, is one of the things that we need to talk about is how we're going to handle any of our capital, whether it's vehicles or buildings or those kind of things. And the plan currently just has all of those numbers in there. Whether or not that'll be approved, whether or not that's what the staff is going to say, it's what we look at today and we say, hey, this is our capital replacement plan. So there might be $1 million worth of stuff in there for 2016. We may only come back to the council and ask for $500,000. So it is a plan. It's just a long-range plan that kind of shows that, but there's nothing that's really changed that plan to date any more than what you've seen in the past.
Thank you, because I know these numbers looking out, they scare me.
Sure.
Because they're going nosedive.
Understood.
Any other questions for Bill? All right, Bill, thank you very much. Good job.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move into an invited guest. Obviously, Dr. Rome could not make it tonight. I believe Sheila's here tonight with the university. Sheila, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. For those of you that do not know me, I'm Sheila Gassner. I'm the Executive Director of Facilities and Planning at the university. Dr. Rome had planned on being here tonight, but as you know, he did have a death in the family. Very quick, very short. I'm not sure what Dr. Rome would have said, but this is what I'm saying. Thank you to our architect, Kerry Gamfer, and his staff. Thank you to the Parks and Rec staff and the commission, the city staff, and the city council. Lincoln has been waiting a long time for a student rec center, and it's great to see the enthusiasm that we can bring together as a community in a collaborative project. Thank you also for working so diligently on the time frame. We have been discussing this for a long time on campus, but now under Dr. Rome's leadership, we're going to see it happen. This project has become a priority and is funded. The students also passed a fee to support it, so they'd like to see it built soon. So thank you again for understanding our time frame and giving this project your serious consideration. Any questions?
Any questions of Sheila? Bob?
Sheila, I guess I should have probably asked this of Bill as well, and maybe I will yet, but I know that you have been working real diligently to try to work out a collaboration to meet your students' needs and to meet citizens' needs. And we've also, in fact, I know there's been conversation about the possibility of using that facility even beyond that. Is that something that has been worked out to your satisfaction, or that you think can be worked out to your satisfaction to utilize that facility for tournaments and other events?
I believe so. As Dr. Rome we've been in meetings with Dr. Rome, and he's like, we don't have anything right now, so anything is better than nothing. We have one gymnasium that's used for everything, academics, athletics, and our students. So having a project like this, yes, there's going to be some give and take on both sides. But as you can see, we're on a 2-week winter break right now, and there's nobody on campus. So there's going to be times like that we're going to have our downtime, and we understand in the collaboration that there's going to be times that the Parks and Rec are going to want to use it, the community is going to want to use it. So that's what it's all about.
Okay, and I guess has there been any kind of work on a formal conflict resolution? I mean,
Well,
I know you're working.
We're working on an MOU, and that's being reviewed on both sides.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
Rick.
I'd like to echo Councilman Scrivener's concept about a conflict resolution plan as we move forward on this, so that all the parties get to the point where everybody can get well served by the facility. One additional goal that I'd like to throw out there for Lincoln University is to increase enrollment. And I hope this facility is designed in such a way and it presents itself in such a way that students that are bused in, that are considering Lincoln University, they see this facility and it grabs them as a place that they could come and go to school and relax and recreate at night. So I hope your strategic enrollment folks are looking at this and designing
Absolutely.
in the design portion of it.
I actually was going to say that in my notes that several years ago it used to be libraries. You used to go, and when you were recruiting, you took your students to libraries, and now it's a student rec center. So it definitely will be a recruitment tool.
Great. Any other questions for Sheila? All right, Sheila, thanks for being here tonight. Appreciate it. Thanks for all your work. Next on our agenda, under invited guests, we have Miss Denise Chappell, who's the Commission Chair of Parks and Recreation. Miss Denise, welcome.
Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you for having me this evening. Though some may have stated that they are confused in our intent for this project, let me reiterate on behalf of the Parks and Recreation Commission that this building will serve as the primary delivery mechanism for current indoor programming and enable us to further enhance future programming needs while integrating Lincoln's vision and promise to their students for a fitness and recreation center. In addition, with the ability to utilize it as a source for revenue generation, we open Jeff City up as a major player for sports tourism, which serves to increase sales tax revenues from visitors who come as participants, chaperones, and familial supporters. The Parks and Recreation Commission has worked long and hard to allocate the financial resources to reach the goal of providing a public recreation facility which is needed to improve our quality of life in which our citizens deserve. The Commission has gone on record in support of a forecourt recreation facility with an elevated walking track as the minimum necessary to achieve the benefits the community desires. The promising partnership with Lincoln University brings this goal closer to reality. As the end-of-year deadline given by Lincoln University rapidly approaches and total funding is short of the architect's estimated cost to complete the project, the Parks and Recreation Commission is keenly aware of the Council's acknowledgement of the importance and value this facility will have for our community. We are here to formally request $1.5 million in financial assistance to bring resources within the architect's estimates to meet the deadline and give the Commission and Lincoln University the confidence that our partnership can successfully move forward. All of this becomes a win for both the City of Jefferson and Lincoln University. It has been my pleasure serving as the president of the Commission during this momentous partnership initiation, and I look forward to continuing to serve as we take this from concept and begin to operationalize this project. We thank the city leadership for their continuing support of the project and the Parks and Recreation Commission. We consider it an honor to partner with Lincoln as a great institution and are looking forward to a great and long-standing relationship. On behalf of the Commission, I thank you for your interest and appreciate your consideration to support this important endeavor. I'm here for any questions.
Thank you, Denise. First of all, I'd like to thank you, your commission, and our park staff, and especially Lincoln's staff for all working together to try to get this to where it's at tonight. We've come a long way since September 2nd.
Yeah, we have.
And I think that's due to your work and the work of your group and obviously Lincoln and Bill's group also. Any questions of Ms. Chappell? Bob.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate all the work that everyone has done. I know it's really been a hard work under a fast pace because of the time constraints. I think in all this conversation, we may be losing sight of the fact that the Parks and Rec determined through their study that the minimum configuration was 4 gyms and a walking track that people wanted and that you desired to have. And that without the collaboration, and apparently without even some additional funding, even that's not going to be possible, that minimum that you'd established, irregardless of whether we use it for outside interest at all. You really can't build your minimum facility without this help. Am I correct in that?
Absolutely. During the feasibility study, I mean, with resounding support, the community said, you know, not only do we need to support current programming, which, you know, park staff deems as at least three courts, but they need a place to be able to play. Kids and adults both need to be able to come in and utilize the facility to be able to, you know, play with the grandkids or be able to play 5-on-5 on a weekend afternoon. And that just would not be possible without not only the partnership with Lincoln, but potentially your support as well.
Okay. And so I just didn't want to get lost in the discussion that fact that you know, there have been some that have questioned the need for the collaboration. Well, the building is really not going to be built without collaboration, is what, or at least not right away. It may be built off sometime in the future, many years from now, but it's not going to be built right away. The same way, without our help, it appears that maybe even with collaboration, there may not be a building built anytime soon. So I think the kind of the icing on the cake is the fact that the minimum building that Parks and Rec had determined is necessary is also going to be a building that will apparently help with this idea of sports tourism. And so it's really, in my mind, the number that you're asking the council to help you with is a contribution that is really an investment more so than a contribution. It is helping to ensure a facility that actually can return some benefit to the community, not just through the use of the citizens, but also through attraction of people to come visit our community. So I think you put together a plan that probably deserves our support, or at least it sounds to me like it does.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Any other questions of Ms. Chappell? Laura.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you very much for working both with Lincoln and the park staff and you know, collaborating and keeping the lines of communication open to us also. I believe anything less than 4 courts is undesirable for our community. I coached a rec league for young girls, and just finding gym space in town. You have to rent it, pay for it, it's additional fee that you have to pass on to your participants. Even then, trying to schedule a gym with one of the local schools is almost impossible. I was fortunate to know the athletic director at Fatima, so we would carpool down there to get free gym space. So, you know, not only for the economic impact of bringing in tournaments, which I also have, you know, some experience with traveling all over the state to those type of tournaments too. Just the impact, the investment on our youth here in town to keep the cost lower for those recreational sporting events for those children who can't afford, you know, to play in a club league. I feel is very important. So thank you for looking beyond and to the future and trying to get at least the 4 courts.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Denise? Bob?
I forgot to ask you, it's anticipated, I would imagine, that because I know Bill had indicated this was a real concern of his, was the operating cost. building it might be easier than operating it. And I would assume it's anticipated that hosting outside tournaments will provide a revenue source that will help fund some of these operations costs. Is that a correct assumption?
That is the hope, that is the goal, and that is why we are having constant conversations with the Convention and Visitors Bureau, seeing how we might be able to collaborate to actualize that hope.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Denise? Rick?
Your request is $1.5 million
Correct.
as a gift or as a loan?
Well, Rick, I've been in sales a long time. What do you got? Let's talk about it.
I knew that was coming.
You know, we have been, as you know, we've been looking for a way to make this a reality. We came asking for financial assistance, and we have not specified whether a gift, a loan, and where those resources would come from. We're just asking for financial assistance that you all would be willing to provide, as well as any relationships that you may have in the private arena that could help potentially with fundraising from private resources as well.
And we hadn't talked about that publicly, but I think I can speak for the entire city, myself and the city council. Whatever comes down the road, whether it's yourself, Mr. Bates, Darrell, whoever's out there beating the doors to make this a much better facility through donations, you obviously have our support.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions for Denise? All right. Thanks for being here tonight.
I appreciate it.
Next, we have presentations from the gallery on a multipurpose building issue. We didn't ask anyone to sign up tonight. What I'll do is just start to your right, my left, and work my way across. And if you want to speak, just please raise your hand. Leonard Steinman. For the record, give us your name and address, and please limit your remarks to 5 minutes. Leonard, welcome.
Leonard Steinman, 110 North Lincoln. As a past Lincoln Knight kitten, I went to Lincoln Lab. The perfect spot that we could ever build this building at is where they're wanting to put it at. Reason why nobody thinks about parking. Paid parking is very expensive. I sit down and figured it out. We got 650 parking spots within 3 blocks. Also, we also have public transportation already been accessed there for the public school system, right in front of where the door would be at. The other thing is we have a thing in the high school called Sea Cadets. I would like to see not only the Sea Cadets, I would like to see the junior ROTC program get started again with volunteer help for all branches of the military that children want to get into. And that would be a perfect place for them to practice how to do their routine so they can make rank before they ever get into boot camp. And that way it would give them an establishment so they can go into ROTC in any university system. The other thing is we need it. That's quality of life brings in businesses. If we can create quality of life, we're going to bring in businesses, and if we have a perfect salesman to go out and sell to our community throughout the whole United States and the world, that we have a quality small town life. And that's what we need. And this will build up our revenues. And if we keep our quality of life, we won't be like Columbia where they have 10 thefts within 10 days. Ridiculous. Thank you. And I hope you think about what I'm talking about. It's a major, major step. But if we decide to put bricks out in front of it, I'm going to be one of the contribution people to contribute for the brick to help build this facility. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Reverend Jeannie McGowan. I live at 209 Cherry Street. And I I'm so happy about so many of the comments that I've heard tonight, because I believe that this is kind of a historic decision that one day we'll look back on, and we're going to thank this particular city council and this particular Parks and Recreation Commission for this wonderful collaboration. I think it has the possibilities of being win-win for so many different reasons. I was primarily interested in the beginning because I live in the core of the city, and I see kids in the core of the city who cannot afford to go to other recreation facilities. And the location is wonderful. That will be a possibility for kids who just want to play some hoops and just want to do some things that keep them out of some trouble. And but as I've learned more about it and thought more about it, I see the possibilities for Lincoln for attracting more students, which will help them. I see the tourist possibilities here. I just think it's a wonderful thing, and I hope you all continue to just make sure the collaboration can continue and it can really happen, because I believe this community is totally behind it.
Thank you very much. Next, please. Frank. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Frank Reisick, 406 Chestnut. I hear talk about touching the lodging tax, and touching the lodging tax appears to be interfering with the possibility of a conference center, and I am very wary of anything that would interfere with the possibility of a conference center. I mean, ideally, I'd like to see a three-part cooperation where this could be included with the conference center, but timelines don't seem to be leading that way right now. The other consideration is parking. Mr. Steinman addressed that, but I'd sure like to hear about how much parking will be available, if there's going to be the hope for sports tourism. I just haven't heard any talk about the parking availability. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. While we're here, Bill, would you like to address the parking?
I'm looking back at Kerry Gamfer,
Kerry's
who's here. He was sick. I wasn't sure he was going to make it today, but thank you.
I know that feeling.
But I think current plans are around 300 spaces. Is that correct, with room for more? And that does not include the softball field parking, which would come into play at certain times.
And if I remember correctly, there's a high school just across the road that has a lot of parking, right?
Correct.
Not that we could use that for free, but I imagine we could probably work something out. Hopefully that takes care of your question, Frank, on the parking. Next, please. Did I miss anyone else in left field here? Moving to center, right field? Anyone here with comments? If not, we'll close the public hearing. Oh, I'm sorry, Paul. One more.
Paul Van Horn, 808 Strasburg Court, Ward 4. I'd like to compliment the creativity that has gone into this plan. To me, one of the biggest things that I've seen that Jefferson City really is needed is a collaboration within the various institutions. One, the educational institution. Here we are, what we're talking about is right next to the high school. We also are dealing with a cultural problem as far as individual parents that are working 28 hours a week in various restaurants and this type of thing. And we have children, therefore, in this area, we have 53% of single households within the core. What are these children going to be doing when they get out of school? Who do they associate with when they get out of school? Well, this is ideal. This is an ideal location for, in fact, the children when they get out of school. They have a place to go. There's structure. There is also, you can bring into the aspect as far as the recreation, so therefore you're dealing with recreation. You're also dealing with the social dynamics of the various social dynamic institutions. You also have the families, which is, in a sense, what we're dealing with here. You're also dealing with many times, in fact, I know Mr. Henry is in fact deals with the judiciary process, and he sees a lot of situations that we have to develop with there. We also see the development of the Corps. What I understand is that the potential impact is 7.1 million economic impact, correct? Now let me ask you this. If it's 1,500,000, what kind of return on my investment am I getting? Would you be satisfied with that kind of investment, Bob? Most of the time. And all of us. So from an economic standpoint, it's a positive. Now I'm sure your manager has taken that in consideration. So I also understand from a recreational, you have 13 potential volleyball or basketball courts, potentially. Think in terms of what that would be for the standpoint of bringing in tourism, business, and all the income coming into the various businesses. I see really this is a, no-brainer when you have that kind of a positive impact. Why is it that many times that Jeff City looks at the aspect is, why can't we do something rather than why not? So many times we are in Jeff City, it looks at the negative rather than positive. Let's look in terms of what this means to us collectively for the entire community, regardless of the institution. I see the churches being involved in this as far as structuring with value system and stealing those things that are very important and valuable to each of us. But I'll open up to any questions that you may have. I'm trying to deal with the economic aspect. I'm trying to see you deal with the social economic aspect of this as well. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Van Horn? All right, thanks, Paul. Anyone else that may have forgot, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing no one at this time, we will move into council discussion and actions. And at this point in time, I'd call on Councilman Ralph Bray, who, by the way, this is your last official meeting, right?
Yes, it is.
Mr. Bray.
And what a great night to finish on. What a great project to finish on. In fact, September 2nd, I know it was early September, but I didn't know it was September 2nd. But the conversation took place that kind of kicked this off and started a lot of people investing a lot of time to make this work. In the nearly 4 years I've been on the council, there are lots of issues have come up, some tough issues and some easy issues. But whether tough issues or easy issues to address, I have never seen anything gain the public support so quick and so fast and so easily as this project has. Broad support throughout the community is what I've recognized. And I thank everybody for being so involved and to help get it to this point. And here we are tonight at this point when we're close enough to the project to make it happen, but short $1.5 million. And the need for a commitment coming up within perhaps just a few days. So with that in mind, this is an important project. A lot of issues have been worked out, and even after tonight, once we can secure the commitment tonight, I hope, there are still issues to be worked out. The design process will continue, and the spaces will continue, and the identifying of uses will continue. And they will continue throughout the project, through construction, and for a long, long time. But tonight, there's an important step that needs to be taken, and the City Council is happy to work with the Parks Commission and try to work to make this happen. And therefore, in order to allow the Parks Commission to enter into partnership with Lincoln University, secure in the knowledge funding is available for a minimum forecourt facility with an elevated walking track, I move to direct staff to execute a memorandum of understanding, Exhibit A, with the Parks Commission for an interest-free line of credit of up to $1.5 million to be paid out of the reserve fund to be paid back over a period of time not to exceed 25 years.
I second that.
And I'll pass this to the clerk, but Exhibit A is the memorandum of understanding that was passed out this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Bray. Thank you, Mr. Henry. We'll open it up for discussion on that motion.
If I
Mr.
may.
Bray. Yes, sir.
I've pretty much said my part, but if there are any, I've already talked to several members of council to try to address the issues that we might have here. I've been working with this project, as have many people, for a while, and I really appreciate the interest and enthusiasm that the entire council shares. It has an interest to make this happen. So I'd be happy to help with some questions if there are any. Plus, we have lots of good information, people in the audience here that can also address questions if anyone has them. That's all.
Okay. We'll now have discussion on the motion. Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This time I want to read a prepared statement I have. That way I don't get off track. On October 20, 2014, this City Council passed Bill 2014-75, which became Ordinance 15329, which adopted a financial policy for the city by a vote of 9-1, with Councilman Scrivener opposing. In this ordinance, expenditure policies, paragraph 2, reserve or stabilization accounts reads in part, quote, the city calculates a reserved, undesignated general fund balance at a minimum of 17% of expenditures, as originally adopted for the general fund budget. These funds will be used to avoid cash flow interruptions, generate interest income, and reduce need for short-term borrowing. Generally, the city will strive to not have one fund subsidize another fund, unquote. Some of you wish to change or do away with this ordinance because its purpose to ensure the financial stability and creditworthiness of the city limits your ability to raid this fund. We should follow the ordinance we passed just 2 months ago, on which the ink has yet to dry. To change or do away with this ordinance would be folly and financially irresponsible. On December 12, 2014, I provided the Finance Committee and others with a 2-page handout with financial data showing for this fiscal year, the general fund is basically subsidizing the Parks Fund by $368,358 by not charging the full cost of providing them general fund funded services. The other 5 funds each fully reimburse the general fund. We expect, and reasonably so, from Mr. Kroll and all general fund department directors and chiefs to live within their approved budgets. We should expect the Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Division to do likewise. During recent budget discussions, there was considerable talk about the need to find money for the repair and replacement of equipment, which has been basically unfunded for several years. In fact, department directors submitted about $1,684,000 in pink sheet requests for equipment which we were unable to fund, which includes the replacement of the HVAC system for the police department. I prefer to fund the needs of the departments within the general fund and allow them to better serve the community. I believe the citizens have entrusted the City Council with the general fund to operate the city, not to operate as a bank. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn, for those words. I would agree. Those are obviously your opinions. As the mayor, I would see this as a win-win-win for Lincoln, for Parks, and for us, because I think what we'll see down the road is added sales tax, added lodging tax, added recruitment from Lincoln, which is huge. So I think I see this as a win-win proposition. Next. Bob.
Well, as someone who voted against that because I thought 17% was more than we needed, not that I was voting against the idea of a set amount, but I thought 17% was well above the average for the last 10 or 15 years. I don't remember just exactly how many years we went back, but that is higher percentage. I would say this. I think that one of our major challenges over the next few years is growing revenues. Our revenues have been flat. Fortunately, we've seen some increase in sales taxes recently. Our property taxes are essentially flat. We need to do something in this community to grow this community and to grow the revenues. And one way to do that is to bring visitors to your community. I think that if I saw this as just a contribution to parks to build a bigger building, just as a Parks and Rec building or just as a contribution to Lincoln University, there's no way I could vote for it. But I see it as an investment in our community, and I don't see it any differently than any other investment that we might make with the purpose of trying to increase revenues into this community. Every time we do something to cause revenues to be spent in this town to either grow our sales tax revenue or grow our lodging tax revenue, we've done something that keeps our citizens from having to pay those taxes. And either, as Mr. Betts made the point during our budget discussions, you can either, I guess actually it was Mr. Aresh said, we can either, it's all about the amount of service that we're going to provide and what the service levels are, and either you have the money to fund it or you cut back on the services. And so we can make a choice. We can sit here and be kind of insulated and just kind of keep on doing what we've always done and expect things to change, and they won't. You have to do something different if you expect change. And I'm willing to, even though I know that we are faced with challenges with going forward funding capital expenditures for equipment and so forth. I know we have those challenges, but I choose to try to grow those revenues and meet some of those challenges through increased growth, not just sitting here and trying to figure out how we're going to reallocate the money.
Mr. Branch.
There we go. One thing is for certain. If we do nothing, nothing will change. The revenues will not grow. We will not grow the base. This is an opportunity for us to help the entire city, the entire community, and make something happen.
Thank you, Jim. Laura.
I agree with both Mr. Scrivener and Mr. Branch's comments, and also it allows an opportunity to grow in tourism, but it also invests in our youth, and it gives an opportunity to grow our quality of life, which can entice families to move here. When you have families who see that there is a strong investment in what your youth are doing in your community, then you're going to have families moving in.
Rick.
I also agree this is a great project, and it will bring in a lot of revenues to the city. I am supportive of the memorandum, but one thing that bothers me a little bit is the length of time and the money that we're taking out of the fund balance, which is drawing interest. And I'd be a little bit more comfortable if interest is involved in a loan as opposed to a non-interest bearing loan. And I know it's not much. I know it's 1 or 2%, but still, that's money that we would be without. I would be more comfortable if that was added to the motion. For example, if we included a 1% for the first $750,000, and after that 2%, and that way, that could be tracked as to what's been borrowed and the percentage rate that is being earned.
Is that are you going to make that?
I'd like to make that as an amendment.
As an amendment, could you restate that, please?
That we amend the MOU to include interest on the borrowed amount for the first $750,000, 1%, and the above $750,000 at 2%.
Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. $750 at 1%, correct? And 2% thereafter. Discussion, please, Rick.
I think we should support this project, but then I think we need to be concerned about interest we're losing on the loan too. We're not asking for a whole lot there, and it's actually keeping in mind how much they're going to borrow. So, for example, if they go by that 750 mark, they know that they're going to be paying a little bit extra percentage, so it gets a little bit more incentive to pay it back, since it is a revolving line of credit.
Any other discussion? Rick?
I think it'd be nice to incentivize just the use of this to disincentivize the use of the 1.5 million as a line of credit loan that they work within the budget, and if it does come out below, it's closer to the 700,000 that that's being loaned, as opposed to the higher amount. So therefore, I think that might achieve some sort of level of caution before we just pull money out of our fund reserve without any interest.
Discussion. Bro.
I would like to, Mr. Kroll, do you have any thoughts on this issue?
Well, it certainly is appropriate. I mean, you could obviously charge any amount of interest you think you deem appropriate. I've always thought that not having the interest was part of the city's contribution in the long run. If my fancy internet calculator figured everything out right, over a 25-year period, it's about $400,000. So if you divide that, $400,000 divided by 25. Yeah, so you're, what, did you say 16,000 or something? So in the scheme of things, per year it's not that much, but over a period of time it is.
And I do. I like to think of it as the interest-free. I do like to think of that as our contribution too. Thank you.
Rick, I value your and Bob's opinion. I look at the way our memorandum of understanding states now, where it's no interest, and for me, the reason I say it as the mayor is, this is a investment in our entire community, and not just the sales tax that the city can see, but the lodging tax, but everything that I mentioned earlier as far as all the different entities and the added revenues and recruitment that they can get. So that's why I think a loan or line of credit at no interest is preferable, just at my point of view. Yes, sir.
Well, in the spirit of a line of interest, it is, we're going to borrow some money, but we're going to pay that back. We're not going to borrow the $1.5 million. So you can't really, I mean, if we're either going to call it a loan or call it a line of credit, it's one or the other. And if it's, if we're just giving them the money and pay it back when they can, then that's one thing. But if we're going to give them a revolving line of credit, they have up to that amount to borrow, but if they pay part of that back, they don't have to pay interest on it. So I'm kind of stuck with that. I mean, that was a general idea, and that's why I put it so low. I mean, it's it's not like a 10% loan or something like that. This is a very good rate. So, but it kind of tempers it a little bit from borrowing above the $750,000. You start getting a little bit higher interest. That's all I was trying to get at.
Okay. Point well taken. Thank you, sir. Glenn.
Yes. Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bear to understand, I think it's a good project. I'm not against the project. I'm concerned about being able to fund city operations.
All right. Thank you, sir. Any other discussion or debate on the motion?
I call for the question.
Question's been called. All those in favor of calling for the question signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We'll now vote on the amendment as stated. Lindsay.
The amendment to the motion was to include an interest rate of 1% up to $750,000 and 2% thereafter.
Roll call, please.
Branch?
No.
Bray?
No.
Costales?
Aye.
Graham?
Abstain from voting.
Henry?
No.
Hussey?
No.
Mahalovich?
Aye.
Prather?
Aye.
Scrivener?
No.
Ward?
No.
Okay, amendment fails 6-3. And by the way, Carlos, would you like to tell the audience why you're abstaining tonight? Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be abstaining from discussion and from vote because I am employed at Lincoln University. I don't want to make it seem as if it's a conflict of interest, so I just want to abstain from the vote and the discussion.
Oh, and by the way, so I don't forget, congratulations on your Alabama win. I can't if you do that stuff on TV, you have to eat a little crow sometimes.
Now room
Okay,
for Mizzou.
back to our original motion. Discussion, please. Or debate. Rick?
The fund balance does bother me in terms of establishing the 17%. And then I did read the book and got knowledge from our fund balance and how it's to be spent. And then I read what the agency for GFOA has to say about this. And at no time in our actual guidelines did we mention whether it was restricted or unrestricted, which is sometimes a part of those fund balances. We just said it's all unrestricted, as indicated by the notation here. So councils can provide more guidance to our staff with regard to what portion of that fund balance should be restricted for true disasters and what can be left to the discretion of the council in more of a need-based policy. I did do analysis over the last 26 years, and our last 5 years was at 15%, and we dipped below to as little as 12% at times, and have come up high as 26% at times, or 28%. So it fluctuates based on things that happen, and the 1 year I was really interested in, 93, it's kind of a little bit of a blank line there. Because we did have a disaster in 93. So I'd like, even at that, our next year was 18% after the 93 flood. So we evidently did something to make our books balance. So therefore, I'm ready for the question to Bill is this. Should we go below what we had passed and the ink hadn't dried on, what is the action by staff?
If the way that it's written, if council were to go to below it, at some point in the next budget year, Steve and I, Mr. Kroll and I will bring back a plan that says in the next 2 years, this is what it will take to get us back to the 17% level. The council can choose to accept that plan, or they can choose to tell us thank you and continue to operate below the 17%. Our requirement is to bring a plan back to the council in order to get us back to the 17% level.
Bill, I have a question for you as a follow-up to Rick's. In what increments, and maybe the architect could help us more, or maybe Bill, but if we had to guess increments that we might do this in, when would the first one be, and when are we looking at project completion?
Yeah, I mean, I can give some
or maybe
ideas
Sheila, I don't know.
Right.
Just an idea, because I see what some of the members of the council are thinking.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, in my mind, this would be the last thing that the Parks Commission and the Parks Board would be coming to look for, is this $1.5 million. So they would get towards the end of the project, and as they get towards the end, if their cost is up at that above the amount that they have set aside, then they would begin to ask the council for money. And I don't know if they'd ask for $100,000 at a time, or they'd come back and say, hey, they'll have their bids in place. So. So if there's change orders or
Kerry, I know you're under the weather tonight, but
don't have him come stand by me.
Correct. Okay, so it could be 250, 500, 500, 250. Good analogy. Thank you, sir. All right, thank you, Bill. So I guess my point is, Bill, we wouldn't be affecting the fund balance all at once. It would be a slow curve.
Correct.
Where staff could manage that and how we're doing that.
I'm not sure who needs to answer this, whether you can or not, but is this 1.5 million or up to supposed to be on the construction or the ongoing operations of this facility?
Construction.
Construction.
And it's up to, if I'm not mistaken, is how
It is up to. It's for construction. And you're right. There's a lot of different phasing in kinds of things that can go on. And one of the major components in the analysis that Bill handed out was taking $1 million off the top for that police department HVAC, which we have not yet discussed. There's some other funding ideas there, probably not $1 million worth, but just it's important to remember that that's taken off the top.
Rick, in that second paragraph, it says to construct. So that's the way. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Bob?
It would be my understanding, I don't know if it's in writing, but it'd be my understanding that the 10.1 million that's available now that Parks and Lincoln has would be spent first, and that this money would be the last to be spent. And if there's any fine-tuning or any cutting that occurs, just as you get farther into it and details are worked out, I know these projects tend to grow, not to shrink, but if there would be savings or whatever, then perhaps the full $1.5 million wouldn't even need to be tapped. Maybe it becomes $1,250,000 or something like that as the final details are worked out. My assumption is it takes $1.5 million, and I assume that $1.5 million will be asked for, but there's always a possibility it might be something less than that too, I guess.
Rick? I'd like to see what Bob just said spelt out in the memorandum that comes, or this money would become after theirs is spent, not during the project, before theirs is spent.
Is that in there already, Drew, or not? I know you made some changes over the weekend and this afternoon.
I don't think it's in there enough, anyway. It would be easy to add, though.
How would you want to do that, sir?
Yeah, if someone wants to make a motion to say that the line of credit will be available after the use of the identified, or the funds that have been identified by Parks and Lincoln.
Yeah,
I don't know.
The thought was that in order to be able to access the funds, Parks and Recreation still has to come back to council. Council still has to approve that, and you would make that decision based on whatever information you wanted at that particular time, part of which I would think would be what funding do you have now, Parks and Recreation, and what is the need for the request. So it's certainly always contemplated. We can certainly make that clearer if that helps.
Yeah, it's, as Steve described it, that is in the agreement now. So,
Would that suffice?
You don't think we need it in there?
I think what Steve's trying to say, and Drew too, is I think as I'm looking at the whereas, the number one whereas, it says right here that they'll basically be the money would be requested by the commission. So, yes, sir, Bob.
I was just going to say, based on what Steve just said, and I really don't think that language is necessary because we do have. It does have to be appropriated at the time, and there has to be a request for it, and there has to be documentation of the fact that it's needed. And if there's money still in their fund, then I don't see how we would feel like it was needed. So I think we still, I mean, we are more than protected is in terms of
Right.
how the monies are spent.
Sheila and Bill, are we on the same page? Is that good enough, guys? Okay. Rick, I appreciate your thoughts. Thank you. Other discussion? Other debate? Seeing none, to ask the clerk to read this very important motion again, and then we'll have roll call.
The motion is to direct staff to execute a memorandum of understanding with the Parks Commission for an interest-free line of credit of up to $1.5 million to be paid out of the reserve fund, to be paid back over a period of time not to exceed 25 years.
Is that correct, Ralph? Drew, is that correct?
Yeah, I think that sounds fine. We were just wanting to make sure it's general fund, reserve fund, and I think that's what we understand it to be.
I think that goes without saying. All right, with that, any questions by council members on the motion? If not, roll call, please.
Branch?
Aye.
Bray?
Aye.
Costales? Nay.
Henry?
Aye.
Hussey?
Aye.
Mahalovich?
Aye.
Prather?
Aye.
Scrivener?
Aye.
Ward?
Aye.
Passes 9 to 1. 8 to 1.
8-1 with Carlos out. I think that's a winner, guys. We obviously know this has been a long time coming. We do have, Ralph, could you hold on just a second? It won't take very long. We're getting ready to adjourn, but the last time we had our meeting, our joint meeting, I wasn't here, I had the flu, and I appreciate Pro Tem Scrivener filling in for me. But one thing that we've always done on the council since John Landwehr was mayor was that we always used this last meeting as someone's last council to describe them in one word, and I have a word for Mr. Bray. And that word is promoter. A promoter can take a vacant ballroom, a fairgrounds, a summer camp, and some things I can't mention, and sees that project through, and they see the project with the venue full. A promoter is someone who reaches out to all the strategic partners for all of the best good of the project. A promoter creates enthusiasm in the community. The promoter reaches out to both sides. Ralph Bray, you've been a dear friend of mine for many years. You're one of the few men in this world. I didn't have any brothers, but my girls do call you Uncle Ralph. I'm going to miss you on the council. Your promotion of a better community, and especially this project, is very well indeed, and we wish you well at the county.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And with that, I would call on Mr. Bray for number 7.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second? All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. I'm not sure if Denise, are you guys meeting next door? Okay. Thanks, guys, for being here, and thanks, everyone, for working so hard, especially on Christmas week.